Let's start with interest rates because this is where the conversation has quietly shifted. Mortgage rates today are at some of the most favorable levels we've seen in nearly 3 years. That doesn't mean we are heading back into a frenzy market, but it does change buyer math. Monthly payments look different, they are lower. Purchasing power looks different, and that brings people back into conversations they may have paused over the past year or two. What's happening in Livingston, New Jersey right now isn't being driven by headlines or emotion. It's being driven by how buyers are recalculating decisions in a market where choices remain limited. Most conversations about the Livingston real estate market still begin with the same statement: inventory is low. And while that's true, inventory alone doesn't explain what homeowners and buyers are actually experiencing. Low supply doesn't tell us why some homes sell quickly while others take longer, why buyers are willing to pay over asking in certain situations but negotiate carefully in others, and why outcomes vary so much even within the same neighborhood. To understand what's really happening in Livingston, we need to look beyond averages and focus on how buyers are behaving and how limited turnover is shaping outcomes. One of the most important data points in Livingston over the past 5 years hasn't been price, it's been volume. In 2021, roughly 500 homes sold in Livingston. In 2025, that number dropped to 359. That's not a seasonal slowdown or a temporary pause. That's a structural reduction in turnover. When fewer homes trade hands, the market stops behaving like one big average. Instead, it becomes segmented. Results start to vary much more widely depending on price range, condition, presentation, and how clearly a home aligns with what today's buyers are actually looking for. During this time period, prices in Livingston have continued to rise. Average sale prices moved from the mid 800 thousands in 2021 to over $1.3 million in 2025. That doesn't mean the buyers are reckless. It means demand remains fundamentally strong. What has changed is how selective buyers have become. Buyers today are evaluating layout, renovation costs, long term flexibility, and future value far more carefully than they did just a few years ago. With replacement options limited and financial commitments larger, buyers are taking more time to compare and choose. Another statistic that often gets misunderstood is the sale to list price ratio. In Livingston, New Jersey, homes are still selling at or above asking on average. But this doesn't mean every home automatically commands a premium. What it tells us is that pricing power still exists when a home is positioned correctly, when pricing is accurate, when condition and buyer expectations are aligned. Buyers are still willing to compete for the right home. What they are no longer doing is overlooking misalignment simply because inventory is low. This selectivity becomes even clearer when we look at where activity is actually concentrated. The most consequential activity in Livingston right now is happening under $1 million dollars and extending up to about $1.5 million. This is where renters are becoming buyers. It's where townhome owners are deciding whether to move up. And it's where monthly affordability, renovation, trade offs, and long term value matter the most in this range. Outcomes are heavily influenced by preparation, pricing accuracy, and negotiation strategy. Homes that are clearly positioned tend to move efficiently. Homes that miss one or more of these elements often take longer and invite negotiation, even in a low inventory environment. Days on market in Livingston have remained relatively stable overall, but what has changed is the spread of outcomes. Some homes sell quickly, others take longer. That doesn't mean demand has disappeared. It reflects buyers being more thoughtful, more comparative, and more disciplined in how they make decisions today. Buyers are not rushing, they are choosing. When I look at the Livingston market in New Jersey, I don't rely on a single statistic or a formula. I look at how pricing, volume, and buyer psychology interact over time. Reviewing 5 years of data shows us more than where prices landed. It shows how buyers responded as inventory tightened, interest rates shifted, and replacement options became more limited. My background in economics and design shapes how I interpret these patterns and how homes are positioned. Strong negotiation is what turns that analysis into outcomes. In today's market, success isn't about pushing for the highest number. It's about understanding where leverage exists and aligning a home with how buyers are actually making decisions. Livingston, New Jersey is not a market driven by national narratives. It moves through quieter shifts in supply, buyer psychology, and replacement options. Demand remains fundamentally strong, even with the interest rates around 5% for 30-year fixed, which are historically moderate rather than restrictive. What has changed is how carefully buyers evaluate each decision. Understanding these shifts allow homeowners and buyers to make informed choices grounded in data rather than noise. If you are a homeowner, a townhome seller, or a renter thinking about buying in Livingston, New Jersey, the most valuable step right now is clarity, understanding where your home fits, how buyers price your home, and how they are behaving and what outcomes are realistic. If you'd like to talk through that, I'm always happy to share what the data suggests. I'm Nina Jindal of Keller Williams, bringing you hyper-local insights from New Jersey's Midtown direct train line towns. Let's have a conversation today.